Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner. And welcome to this Scream Factory movie review video as part of my Scream Factory review series for the month of May here as I go through random Scream Factory movies, watch and review from my collection here to try to catch up on my horror movie watching. Today we're going to take a look at a pretty I think pretty well known, kind of obscure, I guess, or cult, I guess would be a better way to say it. And that is Q, the Winged Serpent from 1982. Um, yeah, Larry Cohen film. So, like a lot of these movies, this is the first time I'd seen this movie. I have a nice Scream Factory edition of it here, although there's not a lot of special features on it. You can see, sorry, the lighting's kind of. There's an audio commentary on it and the theatrical trailer, so pretty minimal on the special features. But Q, the Winged Serpent. Let's go ahead and get into it. My first time watch. Drinking my coffee here from my Jason mug, as you can see. And I'm wearing my one of my favorite new shirts, my friends horror shirt here that I got from a horror convention a couple months ago, Days of the Dead. Q the Winged Serpent. It's also known as just Q. It's a 1982 American monster horror film written, co-produced, and directed by Larry Cohen. The film follows a petty swindler who accidentally intrudes in a case involving a winged deity monster that poses a threat to New York City. He is the only person who has information that can help the police to stop the creature. So basically, that's the gist of it. But the film opens with the Aztec god. I don't even know if I can pronounce this name. Quetzalcoatl, Quetzalcoatl, a winged dragon-like lizard who takes up residence in the Art Deco spire of the Chrysler Building in New York City, with frequent jaunts in the midday sun to devour various helpless New Yorkers on the rooftops. The resulting bloody mess confounds detectives Shepard and Powell, who are already occupied with a case involving a series of bizarre ritual murders linked to a secret Neo Aztec cult. Gee, I wonder if there's any connection there. Jimmy Quinn, a cheap paranoid crook who wishes to be a jazz pianist, takes part in a botched diamond heist. Attempting to hide from the police after the robbery, he stumbles upon the creature's lair atop the Chrysler building. Quinn abandons his attempts to settle down and leave his life of crime, deciding to extort from the city an enormous amount of money in exchange for directions to the creature's nest, which houses a colossal egg. So yeah, that's the setup and the premise for Q, the Winged Serpent. As far as the cast goes, we have Michael Moriarty as Jimmy Quinn, Candy Clark as Joan, David Carradine as Detective Shepard, Richard Roundtree as Sergeant Powell, James Dixon as Lieutenant Murray, and Malachi McCourt as Commissioner Nick McConnell. So that's the setup, the premise, and the cast for Q, the Winged Serpent. Um, this was a really enjoyable watch for me. I really had a good time watching this movie. Um, you know, so let's just go ahead and get into my review with it, starting with my pros. The first pro I have is the creature, is Q, the winged serpent. He's not shown for a lot of the movie. In fact, the first hour almost, he's basically not shown on screen, other than you can hear him, you see the results of him. You can see a shadow on a couple of the buildings as he's flying by. But it's really about halfway or beyond in the movie before you actually see him. But when you do see him, I think it's really cool. It's a simple design, but effective, in my opinion. I love the stop motion that they use for him, the stop motion effects they use, and how the creature looks among the New York skyline and the skyscraper. Really effective creature look, especially when you consider this is a low budget B horror movie, monster movie. So when you take all that into account, I think that the creature looks really good in this movie when it is shown like the last 40 minutes of the movie. Not perfect. I know some people say it looks kind of cheesy, but again, you have to take all elements into effect. As far as the time it was made, the low budgetness of the movie, and not having a lot of money. I'm a big fan of stop motion animation, so that works for me. I'm not going to say this is a level on Harryhausen or anything like that, but it's pretty good. I really enjoyed the look of the creature and how it looked in this setting. So that's my first pro. Um, my case is opening up. I have to say I also like the different storylines that are going on with this movie. The beginning of this movie kind of has three different storylines, if you will, that all sort of interconnect and come together by the end of the movie. I thought that was kind of unique and different for a horror movie, especially from the '80s, where everything's kind of paper thin. You get one story that's kind of hard to believe, and I'm not saying everything's believable here, but the fact that there's kind of a few different things going on shows me that this was a well written movie. I guess is the best way to sum that part of it up. Yeah, I just like the different storylines that come together throughout the movie. It was different and interesting, and it worked pretty well, in my opinion. Pretty well. One of the three storylines I was a little less excited about. I'll get into that with my cons. It's a really well shot movie. I really love the aerial views, the camera work. The views from high above the buildings and the aerial views looking down on New York City. They're really awesome. They're just excellent. So I have to say the cinematography and the look of this movie is really good. Um, and speaking onto that point, I got to talk about the setting of this movie. I love the New York City setting in the late '70s, early '80s. It has that sort of time frame feel to it. Not necessarily like a dirty New York City like you get in Maniac and some other movies, but it's just I just love that time for New York City and taking sort of an historical creature out of its element and putting them into modern times in New York City. I mean, really, it really works well for this movie. Just how this mythical creature looks against, like I said, the New York City skyline. It really works well with having the skyscrapers, all the people that are being taken off the roofs. Just a great overall setting that really worked for this movie. And I haven't even talked about the characters yet, so you can tell I got a lot of pros for this movie. Um, I really love the chemistry between our three main characters, Jimmy Quinn and the two cops, Shepard and Powell. I thought it was really worked well from an acting standpoint, from a humor standpoint, a writing and dialogue standpoint. It's just very overall entertaining. I mean, these characters just do a great job. They're very well written. How they come together is great. And that gets me into the acting, particularly by Michael Moriarty, David Carradine, and Richard Roundtree, who plays these three characters. I thought they did a really good job because when you look at this movie on the surface and you read about it, it's kind of a silly premise, sort of a fantastical kind of horror movie, a monster movie, and it might be hard for some actors to take seriously, but these three, I felt like they were all in, like they were these characters, they were in this story, and they played it. Well, there's humor in the movie. It's never sort of the wink, wink, silliness that it could have been. I mean, they know what kind of movie they're in from having a winged serpent flying over New York City in 1982, but it's not overly silly. It's definitely I wouldn't say a horror comedy. It's more of a B horror monster movie that has good horror elements into it, and a lot of that has to do with these three main actors who really take their roles seriously, but not necessarily the movie seriously, if that makes sense. Um, yeah, they just all do a great job, and between the writing of their characters and the performances of the actors, it really holds this movie together. Because a lot of there's a lot of times in this movie where the creature's not on screen, and so to be a viewer and be engaged in this movie, you got to have those strong characters and the strong performances, and this movie does. I have to say, and especially Michael Moriarty. I mean, I've seen him in other roles, but man, he's guns blazing in this role, and I just love his character of Jimmy Quinn. It's also interesting too because Jimmy Quinn isn't necessarily a good guy or a likable character, but he's also I wouldn't say like the worst person. You can kind of understand where he's coming from, even though he doesn't necessarily look out. He doesn't have other people's best interests at heart. He is kind of selfish in that regard. I find those characters to be the most interesting. And again, it goes back to the writing by Larry Cohen in this movie. But I find it interesting. The most interesting characters are the ones that have a lot of depth to them. Like they're not just cookie cutter good. They're not just terribly bad villains, but they're kind of in that in between, that gray area. And that's certainly where Jimmy Quinn fits into this movie. And as I said, Michael Moriarty, he just eats up this role. He just relishes this role, you can tell, and he does a great job playing the character of Jimmy Quinn. That's as engaging as the creature, in my opinion, in this movie. And they both play well off of each other, and that's why the movie's so engaging. Um, the pacing of the movie is really good as well. I was never bored, always intrigued and engaged, as I said, as a result of the creature, the serpent part of it, as well as the characters and how well they're written. But it does have a perfect 90-minute. It's like 93 minutes, I think. So it's that hour and a half, that perfect horror movie timeline and pacing, in my opinion. So it's a really fun ride, really easy to get through. They don't overstay their welcome, so that's something that um, really stood out to me. And overall, my final pros, it's just a really extremely entertaining and fun movie. From the characters to the look and the design of the creature to the subtle humor to the dialogue and the writing. Just really, I'll like sum it up best by saying it's an awesome B horror monster movie, like something you might see from the 50s, to be honest with you. Is it over the top? Yes, but I don't know. I enjoyed it. Larry Cohen, hats off to you, man. Rest in peace. I mean, you did a great job making this movie work for a premise that might be silly and not really work for a lot of directors, a lot of people. But you did a great job with it. So the directing as well. So yeah, I really enjoyed Q the Winged Serpent. Getting into some cons about this movie. Some of the effects don't hold up as well, especially at the end when characters are being thrown around and dropped by the creature. Those look pretty cheesy. You can tell it's in front of a screen. They don't hold up that well. Also, the blood that we see on the creature at the end of the movie from being shot doesn't look great. It's really kind of fakey, to be honest with you. Again, I give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. I realize Larry Cohen didn't have much money for this movie. He even says that in interviews. And the time that this movie was made with practical effects, I've seen worse, but I've certainly seen better. So that's just something I have to bring up. The fact that you don't see the creature on screen for the whole movie, that might turn some people off. But like I said, there's enough entertainment there besides the creature. For me anyway, to still make me engaged in the entire movie. But just be warned, the first half hour to an hour, you don't really see the creature in its full glory on the screen. Some of the kills aren't shown on screen; they're just the results of them, like people losing their heads. Basically, you have a helmet flying on the ground, a bloody inside helmet, and a body without a head early on in the movie. Again, I'm sure that was a money thing. They couldn't show a lot of violence or on-screen kills. But yeah, otherwise you just see people getting picked up by the creature, but not necessarily like really crushed or ripped apart per se. So just kind of know that going in. I'm not saying it's a huge con, certainly not a con for me, but some people might be wanting to see the creature like rip bodies in half. You're not necessarily going to see that in this movie. Although the movie does have some blood and gore, certainly, not just from the creature, but also the other story element to this movie where there's this um, sort of this ritual killing thing going on. Um, this neo-Aztec cult thing that involves cutting some people and cutting people's chests down to their stomach. So there is blood and gore in this movie, but it's certainly not a real gory movie, I wouldn't say. And then my final con, I have to say, is the third leg of the plot, if you will. Like the plot with Michael Morinardi's character and how he comes to be with the jewelry heist gone wrong. And I like that one. I like Q the Winged Serpent part of it, but I think of the three sort of plots going on, I think the secret Neo Aztec cult is the one that's the least flushed out with the ritual killings. I think it's definitely the weakest of the three, especially when the killer of that is revealed at the end. He was never introduced to us at any point in the movie. So it's really just not as explored or flushed out as well as the other two plot points. And again, I'm sure that has to do with movie and just time for the movie. But yeah, that's something that stood out to me. It's like you get a little bit of it at the beginning, like a charred body that you see, and then at the end with the when the killer is revealed of the Aztec cult that's going on, and it just kind of it's definitely the least of the three storylines, as I said. So otherwise, guys, I really love Q the Winged Serpent. I'm definitely glad to have it in my Screen Factory collection. I wish there were more interviews with the actors and Larry Cohen before he passed away. Um, obviously, I wish there were more special features on this release, but I really was so entertained by the movie. I really was. And I'm going to give this movie an 8.5 out of 10. And some of you might be saying that's too high given the B horror quality of the movie and the sort of the silliness of it. But I just think they did a fantastic job given what they had to work with the characters, the performances, the writing, the directing. Having this big serpent flying over New York City in the early 80s, just love it, man. So I don't care. 8.5 out of 10 for Q the Winged Serpent. Go ahead and comment down below what you guys think of this movie, Q the Winged Serpent. Did you like it as much as me? Not as much? Why not? Comment down below. Please like this video and hit the little notification bell down below so you don't miss any of my upcoming review videos for this Scream Factory series. And be sure to subscribe to my channel as well so you don't miss any of my great horror content coming out the rest of this year following this series. I already have June through August figured out, so stay tuned for that. So be sure to subscribe. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this review. Definitely recommend Q the Winged Serpent. Check it out, especially if you're a fan of of those like 50s monster movies or B horror movies. This one really works. So check it out. Highly recommend it. Thank you for watching. Hope everybody's doing well, but stay scared. Bye.